We did it, boys! We reached 4,000 subscribers. As promised, I'll show yins how I make my videos. That way, even you can start your own channel if you so desire. So without further ado, let's get into it. I'm Ian, and this is how I make my YouTube videos. When making videos, the first thing every content creator must do is to decide what the video itself is going to be about. For me personally, I wanted to make videos people would come back to watch again and again. I also didn't want to deal with copyright whatsoever, so I scrapped music entirely from that list and decided, okay, what asides from music do I watch here on YouTube consistently? And the answer was quite obvious: game guides. Whilst I have personally taken inspiration from many different content creators here on YouTube, undeniably the biggest source of inspiration out of any individual YouTuber here is unquestionably William Strife himself, more specifically his Fallout New Vegas Weapon Guide series, wherein he shows off the best unique weapons in the entire game and where to acquire them. Once a topic for a video has been decided upon, however, the next step is rather simple: gathering gameplay for the guide itself. After all, a guide to a character or weapon in a game is not going to be a very good guide if you can't gather gameplay footage for that weapon or character in the first place. As for how I gather the gameplay, that's actually rather easy to explain. I just use OBS to record myself for these videos. How long do I record for? That depends on the video itself. Sometimes I can spend hours trying to find the right clips I want for a video, whilst other times I can do a single run in less than an hour and have all the gameplay I need. However, at the end of the day, it all really depends on how long it takes for me to finalize my thoughts on the video topic in question. For the Streets of Rogue character series, for example, all I really need to do is play through the game again with that specific character in order to refresh my memory whilst gathering gameplay for the video. Meanwhile, my TF2 Killstreak series take considerably more time on average, since this requires me to spend a lot of time in queue waiting for games, hoping that bots don't ruin the games in question, as well as hoping that I can actually do well and don't just get stomped by people who are better at me in the game. Sometimes I'll realize midway through production that I forgot something important and will have to go back into the game to record myself doing something or find a clip online somewhere to use to demonstrate something I deem important enough not to overlook. But usually this will be unneeded. Regardless, the next step will always be script writing. The script writing phase is always the same. I pull up the Google Doc and start typing my first draft, which serves more as a tool to avoid stuttering and to ensure that I don't forget any important details than even a vaguely accurate representation of what I'm going to actually say in the final video. This is for a variety of reasons. Sometimes I remember stuff whilst recording that I forgot to put in the script and just start blurting it out in post, but a far more common reason is that a joke of mine ends up being not as good as I thought it was once I start reading it out loud. Whereupon I decide that we simply need to cut this joke out entirely because it just makes the video needlessly long and is more likely to get people to click away than to keep watching. However, unquestionably, the most common reason that something I end up writing in a script doesn't make it into the final video being verbally said whatsoever is because I often put something in parentheses to act as anchor points for me to edit stuff in. Insert editing joke here. Regardless of what I end up typing in this script, the next step is always the same: recording and editing. Which means, yes, this is where the interesting stuff happens, where you get to see what programs and hardware I use to actually make these videos in the first place. As you can plainly see from the footage playing in the background, I use Shotcut to edit my videos. But before I get into that, I want to first focus on what I do to get the audio done, since that's what I do first before editing the video directly. In terms of what software I'm using to record my voice, I use Audacity because it's free. In terms of hardware, I use a $20 USB mic I got off Amazon since my gaming headset broke years ago, and I'm cheap. Generally speaking, I use the Tab key to divide my script into segments so that I don't have to record it all in one monster session, but instead into bite-sized chunks I can do one day at a time. This way I can divide the labor needed to get these videos done over the course of multiple days, rather than trying to do a single monster session every single day off I get. Once I have properly recorded myself in Audacity and saved the file as an MP3 on my computer, I import the file that is my succulent voice into the project that is going to become the next video I'm working on. It is at this point that I start to decide what background music I wish to play in any given video. This is partly done to make sure that any blemishes in my initial audio recording are harder to notice, such as my 3D printer when I decide to run that. However, the real reason that inspired me to make this decision was watching the older content of a YouTuber I like to watch here on YouTube that does unrelated content to what I do here. wherein I noticed that his older videos are harder to keep myself watching since they lack background music among other things. Wasn't the biggest issue in the world, could still finish the videos, but it did take some active effort unlike the more recent stuff he creates. Once I add the audio into the Shotcut project that is going to be the next video, I tend to put the gain volume filter and set it to -16ish in order to make sure that the music itself doesn't drown out my actual voice that you're supposed to be focusing on. And depending on what music file I decided to use for a given project, I may need to crank it up more or less, but -16 is usually the average sweet spot for most video files I have on my computer. And yes, I do sometimes just use full screen recordings of something in order to get the audio I need. So if you're wondering how I got the video audio from the Meet This series in Team Fortress 2 into my own videos, the answer is I just took a full screen recording of them in OBS and then just detached the audio and put that in. However, that is not the only place in which I get my audio for my videos. For example, the music used from Charlie the Unicorn I got from the Twitch.io download that FilmCal set up so that anyone who wants to use his music in their own videos can do so. If you hear Undertale or Streets of Rogue music whatsoever, I actually just bought the soundtrack from those off Steam and used those files. And when it comes to the Zelda remixes, those were just on my computer. The desktop I used was a secondhand item I got from my brother, and I don't know where he got those from. He just forgot to delete those. Hell, the only reason he gave me this desktop was because he didn't want to pay some sort of fee for electronic waste. Hell, the entire conversation was literally just, "Hey Ian, I got some spare graphics cards. If you give me $600, I'll get you a new PC. Wait, what? Yeah, I'm getting rid of my old PC. I'll just replace the graphics card. Sound good to you? Sure. Little out of nowhere, but deal." But back to the subject of making my videos. Once the audio is how I like it, I then focus on making the visuals accompany my voice via cuts of gameplay recorded previously during Step 1, as well as using PNG files that I found somewhere online. And by somewhere, I usually mean either game wikis or Google search. I often like to have these PNG files alongside stock sound effects in order to make sure their transition into the video seems less jarring and out of nowhere. Once the audio segment I am working on has been dressed up to my liking, I then focus on recording the next audio segment in Audacity and repeat the process until the video is finished. This process of mine usually takes me somewhere between 7 and 10 days to get the video finished. However, when I first started, it took much longer since I had no idea what I was doing and had to spend a considerable amount of time learning how to navigate the Shotcut program to begin with. But the biggest reason for my relatively consistent upload schedule is because I follow a simple rule. Make sure that the video is closer to being done tonight than it was this morning every single day. Sometimes all I do is write a script or record an audio segment. Other times I end up getting into the zone and finish about 50 to 90% of the video in a single afternoon. Sometimes I only edit a minute or two of the video after getting home from work, whilst other times I spend my entire day off marathoning the video. Regardless if it was an inch or a mile, I always make sure that I'm at least one step closer to finishing the next video than I was the day before. When making videos, especially once you get monetized here on YouTube, you might be tempted to try to drag out your videos past the 8-minute mark in order to get mid-roll ads to effectively double the money you make from videos.
It's a trap!
Trust me when I say this, that any attempt to try to drag out the video unnecessarily will simply result in fewer people watching the video whatsoever in the first place. You'll get much more ad revenue from getting someone to watch your 5-minute video than from the people who decided not to click on your 8.5-minute video because it was too long. In fact, many of my killstreak videos for TF2 suffered tremendously because I fell into this trap for several months. As for thumbnails, I usually just whip something up in Paint 3D using the PNG files I mentioned earlier whilst editing the intro. Honestly, as long as you remember two important rules, the aspect ratio YouTube demands of the thumbnails you use, as well as the fact that the majority of people who will see your thumbnail will do so whilst scrolling on their phones taking a dump on the toilet, you'll be fine. Personally, I like to have a more minimalist approach to my thumbnails since it helps you stand out against all the other thumbnails on YouTube since they tend to grab your attention, whilst I just have a black void against a white background effectively. Assuming you're using the default settings in your browser, that is. I personally use dark mode, but most people tend not to bother with going into their settings to change that sort of thing. And if you are wondering how I go about making shorts, the short answer is I don't. I've used Video AI and get some free, easy-to-upload shorts for your YouTube feed. This isn't a sponsorship or anything, that's just unironically what I do. Now, if you've seen the entire process I go about using to make my videos here on YouTube and thought to yourself, that looks easy, I want to give it a shot, well then I have an assignment for yins. See, I don't want to be the only person on YouTube who talks about Streets of Rogue. In fact, I don't want this to be a Streets of Rogue channel at all, I want it to be more of a general gaming channel. As a result, I have no intention of doing anything with the Streets of Rogue game whatsoever beyond remaking my old character guides in order to make sure they fit a quality level I'm content with once Streets of Rogue 2 comes out, and then cover that only because I know people will be demanding it. So if yins can think of something related to Streets of Rogue whatsoever that you want to make a video out of that isn't a simple character guide, such as trait reviews, item guides, mutators, etc., well then you're gonna be completely uncontested because, aside from my own videos, there's nothing here on YouTube outside of a bunch of reviewers saying this is such an underrated game. But that's all for now. I'm sure some of you will have questions, and I'll do my best to answer them in the comments section below, so if there's something important you think I missed, feel free to ask it down below. But with that said and done, I've been Ian, you have been you, and this is how I've been making my YouTube videos. Farewell.